Smoke was never supposed to rise that color. Daniel Brooks knew the land the way a man knows his own scars. He knew the difference between a cooking fire and a prairie blaze. He knew the scent of cedar and the scent of rain. But what drifted over the ridge that afternoon was wrong. Too dark, too thick, and beneath it, something bitter that did not belong to wood or grass. He pulled his horse to a stop. The mare's ears flattened. She shifted under him, uneasy. Daniel felt it too. That tight feeling in the chest that comes before trouble shows its face. He rode toward the smoke anyway. The first wagon lay on its side at the base of the ridge. One wheel still turned slow in the wind, creaking soft like it had not yet accepted what had happened. The canvas top was burned through. Crates split open. A child's blanket lay half buried in ash. Daniel dismounted without a word. 3 bodies lay near the wagon. A man face down in the dirt. A woman still clutching a metal skillet. A boy no older than 10, eyes open to the sky. Daniel swallowed hard. He had buried enough people for one lifetime. Buried his wife. Buried his son. Dug those graves with his own hands behind his cabin. While the fever still lingered in the air, he had promised himself he would not let another tragedy settle under his skin. He should turn back. This was not his trouble. Then he heard it. A breath. Soft. Wet. Barely there. Daniel froze. It came from behind a burned cargo box near the second wagon. He drew his pistol and moved slow, boots crunching in the ash. She was curled against the charred wood, her fingers wrapped tight around a broken leather rein, like it was the only thing holding her to this world. Her dress was torn silk, pearl buttons down the front, stained dark with mud and blood, too fine for this rough country. Her eyes opened, blue, wide, terrified. Daniel lowered the pistol. "Easy," he said, voice low and steady. "I ain't here to hurt you." She tried to speak, but only a dry sound came out. Her lips were cracked. Blood matted in her hair above one eyebrow, where a shallow cut had begun to crust. Daniel slid his arms under her before she could argue. She was lighter than he expected. Light like someone who had not eaten proper in days. He carried her to his horse and lifted her into the saddle. Then he mounted behind her, holding her steady as the mare turned toward home. The cabin sat alone in the valley, its small against the wide Texas sky. It had been quiet for 3 years, quiet since Sarah's laughter stopped echoing in the walls, quiet since his boy's boots stopped thudding across the floor. Daniel kicked the swollen door open and carried the stranger inside. Moonlight spilled across the bed where his wife had once slept. He laid the woman down gently on the faded quilt, her head rolled to the side. He moved without thinking. Water in the kettle, fire in the stove, a torn flour sack for bandages. His hands remembered the motions, even if his heart tried not to. When the boy had burned with fever, he had done the same. Cool cloth, gentle voice, waiting through the long, dark nights. He shook the memory loose. The woman's hands lay open now. Soft palms. No calluses. These were not hands made for scrubbing floors or mending fences. These were hands that had turned pages, held teacups. "Easy now," he murmured as he cleaned the cut above her brow. "You're safe here." Her breathing steadied. Daniel sat in Sarah's old mending chair beside the bed. He did not light the lamp. He let the fire glow low, the orange light moving across the floorboards. Hours passed. Outside, a coyote called and another answered. When dawn crept through the window, her eyes were open. She stared at him like a cornered deer. "Where am I?" she asked, voice thin. "My place," he said. "Found you at the wagons. You're safe." She studied his face, measuring, deciding. "Anna," she whispered. "My name is Anna," Daniel nodded, but something in the way she said it felt rehearsed. He had spent years trading cattle and reading men across poker tables. He knew when someone hid behind a name. Still, he let it pass. The week that followed moved slow. She ate when he brought food, slept long hours, spoke little, moved through the cabin careful, always keeping an eye on the door. Every time his boots scraped too loud against the floor, her shoulders tightened. Daniel pretended not to see. He mended harness at the table, split kindling outside, kept his rifle leaned by the door, but untouched. On the 8th morning, he reached for the Winchester. She went still. "Coyotes," he said calmly. "Been circling the hens. I'll scare 'em off." He stepped outside and fired one shot into the valley. The crack echoed off the hills. When he returned, he found her wedged between the stove and the wall, knees pulled to her chest, shaking hard. Her eyes were open but far away, trapped in whatever hell she had crawled from. Daniel set the rifle down. He did not rush her, did not reach for her. He sat on the floor across from her, hands open, breathing slow, letting her see he would not crowd her. Minutes passed. The shaking eased. When her eyes finally focused on him again, they were wet but clear. "I ain't going to hurt you," he said softly. "Ain't nobody going to hurt you here." She stared at him a long time. Then, slowly, she nodded. And for the first time since he buried his family, Daniel felt something stir in his chest that was not grief. He did not know her real name. He did not know why she had been in that wagon. He did not know that somewhere in Texas, a wealthy rancher was already searching for the bride he had paid $500 to claim. All Daniel knew was this: the door was open, and she had chosen, at least for now, to stay. Struggling cowboy saves lone survivor of a wagon massacre. Unaware, she's a wealthy mail-order bride. The valley did not stay quiet for long. 2 weeks after the massacre, Anna moved through the cabin like someone learning how to live again. She swept the floor, washed tin plates in the basin, hung damp clothes on the rope line Daniel had tied between the porch and the cottonwood tree. Small things, safe things. She still watched the door. Daniel gave her space. He rose early, worked the fence line, fed the calf that had been born too soon. He spoke when needed, kept his voice steady, never asked more than she could give. Well, one morning she burned the biscuits black. Smoke filled the cabin. She stood frozen, staring at the pan like she had failed something important. "I'm sorry," she said. Daniel picked one up, broke it in half, chewed slow. "Ain't the worst I've had," he said. She looked at him, searching for mockery. There was none. The next batch came out better. She started humming sometimes while she worked. Soft, careful, like the sound surprised even her. Then, one afternoon, while Daniel was cleaning his rifle by lamplight, she noticed the 2 wooden markers behind the cabin. "There's graves," she said quietly. He did not look up at first. "Sarah," he said, "and my boy, Thomas." She did not say she was sorry. She did not offer empty comfort. She only poured him another cup of coffee and sat back down. Something shifted between them that night. The next morning, Daniel found a folded envelope tucked inside the silk dress she had worn the day he found her. The one with pearl buttons. The one too fine for this land. He should have left it alone. He did not. The wax seal cracked under his thumb. The words were written in careful ink. Formal, cold, contracted bride. Clara Whitmore, age 26. Sum of $500 paid in full. to be delivered to Harold Whitaker of Whitaker Ranch, Bexar County, Texas. Daniel read it twice. $500. He had not seen that much money in years. He folded the letter and stepped onto the porch. She knew before he spoke. Her eyes found the paper in his hand. The color drained from her face. "That your real name?" he asked quietly. A long silence. "Yes," she whispered. "Clara." The story came slow at first, then all at once. Her father had debts, business failing, creditors knocking at the door every week. Harold Whitaker had written after seeing her photograph, offered $500 in exchange for marriage. Her father had signed. "I was the payment," she said. Daniel felt something hard settle in his chest. "Did you have a choice?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I was 26, unmarried, living in his house. What choice do you think I had?" He handed her the letter. "You want to burn it? Burn it. Keep it. Keep it. Paper don't change who you are." "It changes what the law says," she replied. "Law says plenty," Daniel answered. "Don't make it right." She did not burn it. She folded it careful and tucked it into her apron pocket. 3 days later, Tom Fletcher rode hard over the ridge. Daniel met him at the gate. "Stranger in town," Tom said, sweat running down his face. "Asking about a woman. Dark hair, blue eyes, silk dress. Says she's his contracted bride." Daniel did not turn toward the cabin, but he knew Clara was watching from the window. "He paid $5 for information," Tom continued. "Miller's boy told him you brought a woman in for supplies last week." Daniel's jaw tightened. "He's got 2 hired men with him, shotguns. Says he's coming to collect." Collect? The word made Daniel's hands curl. Clara stepped out onto the porch. "How long?" she asked. "By sundown tomorrow," Tom said. After Tom rode off to warn the neighbors, silence fell heavy over the yard. "You could ride north," Daniel said, "before he gets here." Clara shook her head. "I've been running my whole life," she said, "from my father's debts, from that contract, from the wagon when the shooting started. I ain't running anymore." Daniel studied her face. "Then we face it," he said. The riders came at dawn. Harold Whitaker led them. Tall, broad shoulders, pearl-handled Colt at his hip, confidence in every movement. He reined in 15 feet from the porch. "There you are," he said, eyes fixed on Clara. Daniel stepped forward. "Can I help you?" "This don't concern you," Harold replied smoothly. "I'm here for what's mine." "Nothing here belongs to you." Harold smiled thin. "I've got legal documents that say otherwise." Clara stood in the doorway, chin lifted, though her hands trembled. "I ain't your bride," she said. "Paper says different," Harold answered. "Your daddy's signature. $500 paid in full." Daniel's hand rested on the rifle beside the door. "Go get the sheriff," he said evenly. "Oh, I intend to," Harold replied. "I'll be back tomorrow with the law, and when I leave, she's coming with me." He turned his horse and rode away. That night was long. Clara sat on the floor near the bed, holding the gold ring Harold had sent with the contract. Too large for her finger, cold in her palm. "I was never yours," she whispered to the empty room. Daniel sat outside on the porch, rifle across his knees, watching the dark. Morning came gray. 4 riders crested the ridge, Harold, yet the sheriff. 2 hired guns. They rode into town with Clara between them. By the time they reached the square, half the town had gathered. Harold stood in the dust, contract in hand. "This woman is my contracted bride," he declared. "Bought and paid for." The sheriff shifted uneasy. "I ain't dragging no woman off without hearing her speak," he said finally. Harold reached for Clara's wrist. "You belong to me." She pulled free. The crowd went still. Clara climbed the saloon steps, turned to face them all. "My father signed that paper," she said, voice shaking but growing stronger. "I didn't." Murmurs rolled through the crowd. "I survived that wagon fire," she continued. "I didn't crawl out of that, just to walk into something worse." She pulled the ring from her pocket and let it fall into the dirt. "I ain't property." Silence. Harold's hand hovered near his gun. He looked at the crowd, at the sheriff, at the farmers stepping closer. His pride fought with his temper. Pride won. "You ain't worth the trouble," he spat. He rode out of town in a cloud of dust. Clara's knees gave out when he was gone. Daniel was there before she hit the ground. "It's over," he said. She looked at the empty road where Harold had disappeared. "For now," she whispered. The town emptied slow after Harold rode away. Boots scraped across wood. Doors closed. Voices drifted off into the distance. Dust settled back onto Main Street like nothing had happened. Clara sat on the saloon steps, hands braced against the boards, breath coming steady now. The ring lay in the dirt where she had dropped it. Gold dulled by dust. Daniel stood a few feet away, giving her space. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded, though her legs still trembled. "I thought my voice would fail," she said quietly. "I thought I'd open my mouth and nothing would come out." "But it did," Daniel replied. She looked up at him, eyes clearer than he had ever seen them. "Yes," she said. "It did." They rode back to the cabin in silence, not the heavy kind, a different silence, one that felt earned. The valley looked the same as always, grass bending in the wind, cottonwoods lining the creek, smoke curling from the chimney where Tom had kept the fire alive. Clara dismounted in front of the porch and stood there for a long moment. 3 steps led to the door. The same 3 steps where she had once stood afraid. The same door Daniel had left open the first morning, telling her she could walk out any time she wanted. The road stretched behind her, wide and free. No contract chased her now. No man waited with papers in his hand. For the first time in her life, there was no one deciding for her. Daniel stayed at the bottom of the steps. "Doors open," he said softly. "Same as always." She turned to him. "And if I leave?" "Then I saddle a horse and wish you well. And if I stay? Then we figure it out. No promise, no demand, no condition, just choice." Clara climbed the steps and pushed the door open. The cabin smelled like wood smoke and coffee, while the table sat where it always had. 2 tin cups rested clean and waiting. She stepped inside. Daniel followed, leaving the door propped open with the river stone. She moved to the window and looked out over the valley. The grave stood behind the cabin, 2 wooden markers weathered by wind and time. "Sarah," she said quietly. She was lucky. Daniel did not bristle at the name. "How so?" "She married someone who chose her." He looked down at his hands. "She chose me too." Clara nodded. "That's what I mean." Evening settled slow across the hills. The sky turned orange, then pink, then deep blue. A hawk circled overhead before disappearing into the trees. Clara moved to the stove. "I'll make the biscuits," she said. Daniel almost smiled. "You sure?" "No," she admitted, "but I'm trying again." She mixed flour and lard, but kneaded the dough with steadier hands than the week before. Daniel sat at the table, watching without saying much. When she slid the pan into the oven, she leaned against the counter. "What if he comes back?" she asked. "He won't." You don't know that. No, Daniel said, but I know men like him. Pride matters more to them than anything. He won't risk looking weak twice. She absorbed that. And if he does? Daniel met her eyes. Then he won't be facing you alone. The words settled deep. The biscuits came out uneven, but golden this time. Not perfect. Not burned. They sat at the table and ate in quiet. After supper, Clara stepped outside alone. The stars had begun to appear. Bright. Steady. The same stars she had watched from her bedroom window in Philadelphia years ago. The same stars she had watched from the wagon before the attack. So much had changed. She walked toward the graves. The wooden markers stood simple and unpolished. Sarah Brooks. Thomas Brooks. Clara knelt in the grass. I don't know what I'm doing, she said softly, but I'm not running anymore. The wind moved through the valley. Gentle, not harsh. She stayed there a long while before rising. When she returned to the cabin, Daniel was on the porch, hat in his hands. You choosing? He asked. She nodded. I am. And? She looked at the open door behind him, the light spilling out into the dark, the warmth inside, the space that had slowly begun to feel like something more than shelter. I'm staying, she said. Not because I owe you, and not because I have nowhere else, because I want to. Daniel studied her face. No fear now, no hesitation. All right, he said simply. They stepped inside together. The door remained open a crack, letting in the cool night air. Clara sat at the table that faced the window, her chair, the one she had claimed without meaning to. Daniel poured 2 cups of coffee. The fire burned steady in the stove. Outside, a coyote called. Another answered. Clara wrapped her fingers around the tin cup and felt something settle in her chest. Not relief, not excitement. Something steadier. Belonging. She had been sold once. She had been hunted once. She had hidden and lied and run. But today, she had spoken. Today, she had chosen. Daniel looked at her across the table. You ever think about changing your name? He asked gently, but she smiled faintly. I think Clara's done running, she said, and Anna doesn't need to hide anymore. He nodded. Clara, then. She looked out the window one last time before blowing out the lamp. The valley lay quiet under the Texas sky. No smoke, no riders, no contracts, just open land and an open door. And for the first time in her life, Clara Whitmore knew she was not property. She was not payment. She was not something to be collected. She was a woman who had chosen where she stood. And this time, she was not standing alone.